Happy to have you here today with us at our Research, Action, and Impact, Leveraging Data to Close the Wage Gap for Latinas webinar to commemorate Latina Equal Pay Day, which is today. And before we get started, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping notes. Just so you know, this is a webinar, so your video will be turned off and you'll be muted for the duration of this event. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the box. And we will do our best to address your questions at the end of the event. This session will be recorded, so if you would like to share it afterwards, or if you missed anything, we will be sure to share this with all of you. In the meantime, our interpreter, Leo, will go ahead and interpret all the instructions into Spanish.
Thank you, Star. Hola, buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? Acaba de decir Star, les acaba de compartir algunas notas de las pautas de la sesión. Entonces, antes de su video se va a desactivar y se le va a silenciar mientras dure el evento de hoy. Usted también, si tiene alguna pregunta durante la presentación, la puede escribir en el chat. Y vamos a hacer todo lo posible para responder sus preguntas y comentarios durante todo el evento. Para aquellos que se registraron, recibirán las diapositivas y los enlaces a los informes y artículos que discutimos hoy en un correo electrónico de seguimiento la próxima semana. Por otra parte, para aquellas personas que se quieren conectar al canal de español, por favor, siéntanse en la libertad de hacerlo. Si está en una computadora, entonces, por favor, denle clic al globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla y allí escoja español o Spanish. Si está en un teléfono, iPad o tableta, va a tocar su pantalla, va a ver los 3 puntitos con la palabra más o la palabra more, M-O-R-E, dele clic, seleccione la opción de interpretación y por último seleccione español Spanish y dele clic a la palabra listo, finalizado o done. Les voy a colocar también las instrucciones en el chat en este momento. Muchas gracias y que disfruten. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Leo. And I'll just give a minute so everybody can go ahead and transition over. All right, perfect. Again, my name is Star de los Santos, and I am proud to be here representing Women Employed and the Equal Pay Chicago Coalition. Women Employed is a Chicago-based organization that for over 50 years, yes, 50 years, has been breaking down barriers and creating better futures for women and their families by improving the economic status and removing barriers to equity. And we've played a role in every major advancement for working women since our founding in 1973. I was not around in 1973, but I am here to support now. And with really a focus on addressing the wealth gap at the intersection of gender and race. And the Equal Pay Chicago Coalition, where Women Employed proudly serves as the lead facilitating organization, is a diverse collective of 50 organizations, businesses, and government agencies united in advocating for equal and equitable pay in Chicago. By amplifying the voices of the most affected and fostering dialogue among stakeholders, the coalition really works to dismantle systemic barriers and create a future where pay equity is the norm. And we do this through education and public awareness, and we really aim to eliminate the wage gap, and hopefully one day we will. Today, we're here really to shed light on the economic challenges Latinas face, especially those in underpaid industries and unsafe work conditions, and explore really how data can help us drive meaningful change. Our discussion will focus on the ways we can and have turned research into strategies and into policy that really promote economic justice, benefiting not only Latinas, but our broader communities as well. And I'm really thrilled, especially, to introduce our expert panel who will share their knowledge and insight with us today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and take it over to our panelists to really introduce themselves and talk briefly about themselves and what brought them to this work. Martha, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you, Star. Hi, everyone. I am thrilled to be here today on Latina Equal Pay Day. And well, I'm Marta Susana Jaimes. I am a senior research economist at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. The Institute for Women's Policy Research is a national think tank located in Washington, D.C. We work to win the economic equity for all women and eliminate barriers to our full participation in society. We focus a lot on understanding the determinants of the wage gap, and that is what brings me today here. This is, of course, something that touches my heart. As a Latina and as an immigrant myself, I am incredibly invested in understanding the determinants of the wage gap for Latina women. What are the inequities that we face in the labor market? And most importantly, what can we do to help identify and build pathways to improve those inequities and the working conditions for all Latina women in the United States. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Star and Marta, for being my co-panelists today. My name is Linda Tortolero. I'm the president and CEO of Mujeres Latinas en Acción. Mujeres is the longest-standing Latina organization in the country, and we turned 51 years old. We're the same age as Women Employed, so we're in great company. We are an organization that strive to advocate for survivors of gender-based violence, for women's health, which includes reproductive justice. We also work on economic justice and immigration justice. We are well known for providing culturally specific services for gender-based violence, which includes domestic violence and sexual violence. We also have an Empresarias del Futuro program where we help women who are immigrant women, Spanish-speaking, to start their own business or build their own businesses. And we've been doing that for about 12 years. We also have a Latina leadership program since the 1990s. So we work with immigrant Spanish-speaking women who want to build their own civic engagement and power building skills to do the good work in the community that they think is important. We have a community engagement and mobilization program. So we also do community organizing in the city of Chicago, as well as the Cook County Western suburbs. Our organization is very geared towards making sure that we lift the voices of Latinas and the issues and causes that are important to them. We have 3 offices in the Chicagoland area. And about close to 3 years ago, we launched our national work. We are a culturally specific sexual assault training and technical assistance center with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We've been providing culturally specific sexual assault services for 30 years, and we are supporting other organizations that are working with the Latina populations who are trying to provide services to survivors and to their significant others. We're really enjoying doing that project. And one of the great touch points that we are about to do later this month, because it's October, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is that we will be debuting a documentary about Mujeres' history. It's called Mujeres Latinas en Acción, 50 years of history in the making, and we're very excited about that and just really glad to be part of this. Pay equity is incredibly important to me as a Latina, as an organization that is predominantly made up of Latinas and who serve a majority of the Latina population here in Chicago. We see that the pay inequities that our women are affected by not only affect they themselves, but their families. Many of them are heads of households. If they are survivors, oftentimes they are dealing with traumas of abuse and violence. The immigrant experience, which brings its own trauma and challenges. And so doing Latina pay equity for our employees is incredibly important for the organization. It's a journey that we started about 3.5 years ago around the pandemic commencing, and it's a journey that we're still on. So thanks to my co-panelists for being here with me today to talk about this very important issue.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Linda. And we have our moderator who will be joining us shortly. It is Latina Equal Pay Day, so we are everywhere today, but she'll be joining us shortly. But Izzy Dobell is the political director at the Chicago Federation of Labor, where she oversees the CFL's political agenda, programming, and COPE endorsement process. She connects with political officials, with CFL's 300 affiliated unions and their 500,000 members, and supports legislative efforts at the city, county, and state level. Happy to call her my friend, and she is also part of the steering committee for the Equal Pay Chicago Coalition, as well as Linda. So I have the pleasure of seeing them quite often. All right. And just really quickly, why I got into this work mainly, because hopefully you know me already. I got into this work really because I wanted to see more representation. I wanted to see more people that looked like me, talk like me, and represented who I wanted to be. And so that really motivated me to really get into this work and really inspire other individuals, because I've been really lucky to be surrounded by such amazing powerhouses in my life, and that really have gotten me to where I am today. I wouldn't be where I am today with all these amazing individuals who have really impacted my life. And I really just want to set that example for others and just kind of open the door, so that way one day we won't have a wage gap, one day we won't have to ask for more. It will just be given to us, and it'll just be a reality that we all can really enjoy. All right. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question for today. And it's going to go to our amazing panelist, Martha. Martha, could you walk us through some of the most impactful data points from, oh, hey, Izzy, how you doing? She's here. All right. Actually, Izzy, if you don't, I introduced you and I gave up your bio, but maybe you can introduce yourself very quickly and maybe just give us a little rundown of how the Chicago Federation of Labor is really working to eliminate the wage gap.
Absolutely.
And then we'll go back to Martha.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to, shuffle between things. So, hi everyone. My name is Isabel Dobel. I go by Izzy. I'm the political director for the Chicago Federation of Labor. And a way that labor especially works to close the gender wage gap, and especially for Latinas, is ensuring that everyone has a contract, right? The number one way to close the pay gap is a union contract. That brings women up to 93% of what they deserve. And the only discrepancy there is because if there's some positions at within the building trades. But when it comes to if you are a certain position, everyone in your job are going to be paid the same. So that's something that especially I personally resonate with, but also is something that is really near and dear to our mission is when workers are empowered, and especially in a place that they want to form a union for the first time, they are going to be able to collectively bargain for better pay and better working conditions. I think personally in my story, I bounced around to different jobs for a while, hoping that somebody was going to pay me what I was worth. And not until I entered the labor space is that a reality, because I have all of the rights that I deserved and used to feel like I was asking for too much to be able to, have them. So yeah, CFL and especially the labor movement are really dedicated to making sure that women have equality in the workplace, a voice at the workplace, and are of course compensated for what their talents are. All right, should I hop into the next question, or is it going to Martha? Okay, Martha, I think it's you.
Oh no, hop into the first question.
Oh, okay, amazing, thank you. Okay. So, Martha, could you walk us through some of the most impactful data points from the Latina Equal Pay Day fact sheet? And how does the wage gap affect Latinas compared to other groups? What industries or occupations see the largest wage disparities for Latinas? And why do these industries present such challenges?
Izzy, thank you. And well, first of all, I want to express my sincere recognition to the authors of the fact sheet that I'm presenting today. So this is my colleagues, Kate Ban, Miranda Peterson, and Salma Elekbawi at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. We are sharing the link to our fact sheet in the chat. And then I'll share some of the most important data points that we found and that we are showing in our fact sheet. If we can move into the slides, please. So I have three main data points that I want to highlight among the most important that we are sharing. The first one, if we move to the next slide, it's going to be that the Latinas wage gap worsened in 2023 compared to 2022. We saw a increase in the wage gap of 0.7 percentage points. We moved from earning 52 cents of a dollar of a white man in 2022 to 51.3 cents of a dollar of a white man. That's nearly half of what a white man earns throughout a year. And this, I made it intentional, the graph that you're seeing there, and we're talking about 0.7 cents. It's less than a cent, but that implies a lot of earnings lost throughout a lifetime. And that's something that we're also going to show later on in our data points. This is just to highlight that although it's 0.7 cents. If we look at it in a graph like the one I'm showing there, it's still a lot, right? And the most important thing then is that it worsened. It worsened for all women, but it especially worsened for Latina women. The data that I'm showing here is for all women workers. If we consider the full-time year-round women, Latino women were in the workforce, the earnings ratio is a little bit above the one for all workers. It's 57.8 cents of a dollar. Yet there's still a gap, and it's an important gap for all Latino workers. What we're seeing here is that we've all heard of speedy recovery in the labor force, that the labor market has tightened for all workers in the United States. But yet for Latina workers, what we're seeing is that we're not reaping the same gains as the rest of the workers. These workers are gaining from being able to switching jobs at a higher turnaround, and having access to higher earning jobs. And the fact that the Latina wage gap worsened, it means that we are not sharing equitably in that type of gains in the labor market. Another important data point that I want to highlight, and that will be the second one, is that Latina women were hardest hit by the pandemic. And we had a labor force participation rate of 62.2% by February 2020. And this labor force participation rate fell to 56% by April 2020. Now, the recovery in terms of the Latina labor force participation rate has been going at a good pace, and we reached almost the same labor force participation level by 2023. We reached 62% labor force participation rate for Latino women, yet it plateaued, and it stayed at 62% between 2023 and 2024. So those are two things that are important to highlight. This will be linked to higher barriers to participating in the labor force, most likely connected to the type of occupations that Latina have access to, and also childcare and unpaid work responsibilities that they have to respond to in their households. Now, if we move to the next slide, I'm going to talk about the third most important finding that we have, and it's that it will take Latinas working, for all worker Latinas, it will take till the year 2198 to reach pay equity with white men. So, Star, you are very optimistic, but it's still a long way to go till we can reach pay equity. This is the data. So this will kind of like combine the two data points that I gave you before. All women workers and Latina all women workers will reach this pay equity in nearly 100 years, more than 100 years, right? And if you look at it also for full-time year-round working Latinas, it will take even longer, which will be the year 2338. I was having a hard time even saying the year, because I was like, I don't know how to say this year in English. But it's kind of like it's really hard. It's most likely not going to happen in the near term, right? And this is just showing us the huge disparities and the high level of barriers that Latino women are facing. The discrepancy between all worker Latinas and the full-time year-round working Latinas comes from the pace at which Latino women working for all workers have been accessing to some of the gains is different from full-time year-round working Latinas. Why is this? All worker Latinas historically were more likely to work even fewer hours throughout the year. They were more likely to withdraw from the labor force often, right? And as time has gone by, they've catched up in the number of hours. They've catched up in earnings in terms of this number of hours they've been accessing work. Yet for full-time year-round with Latinas, it shows that they cannot access the better paying jobs because of a lot of barriers such as lower educational levels, discrimination, and of course, immigration status. So this is why it will take longer for full-time year-round Latinas. Now, those are the three data points that I wanted to show you. There's another question that's compared to other groups, how are we faring? And we know that Latinas and Native women have the worst pay gap in the nation. In all states in the United States, Latina women have earnings that are nearly 40 cents. Like for most states in the United States, they have an earnings ratio near 40 cents. Now we have states like California, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Texas, where the earnings ratio is closer to 40 cents than to 50 cents, right? For full-time year-round workers, in the state of Illinois, which I know that there are a lot of Illinois viewers here today, the earnings ratio for Latinas is 53 cents of a dollar. That brings Illinois to the 43rd worst wage gap in the nation. And what does this mean for Latinas all over the United States? It means that we have less earnings to spend in our families and in ourselves, which is also very important. We have less earnings for savings and for emergency expenditures, right? And most importantly, and this is something that I'll highlight later in our talk, is that we will have less money to save for retirement. And that will compound also with the fact that most of our jobs, and this leads to my next point, are not covered by benefits, are not covered by Social Security. So in terms of occupations and industries, Latinas are more likely than any other women to work in the service sector. We see that nearly 30% of Latina workers in 2023 were working in the service sector. And worse off, 1 in 4 Latinas working in the service sector are working in low-paid jobs. So this means we are segregated into occupations that are more likely to not have benefits. We are segregated into occupations such as care, child care, elder care. We are doing domestic work, such as housekeepers, and other service occupations such as restaurants and hotels. Now, all of those jobs are low paid and less likely to have benefits, which will also add into the inequality that Latinas face in the labor force. Now, on the other end, we see that 1 in 7 Latinas work in management, business, and financial occupations, which are the highest paid occupations. Yet we face high levels of discrepancy in our earnings compared to white men. Just to give you another point of data, a Latina earns nearly $1,200 as their median weekly earnings, compared to almost $2,000 that a white man earns weekly in the median in this kind of occupation. So what are the things that lead to this kind of differences? Well, a lot of the Latinas that can access this type of jobs are younger and they're just starting their careers. And this also speaks to the barriers faced by the rest of, or the majority of Latinas, which face a lot of challenges in terms of the differences in their educational attainment and also lack of access to better mobility in terms of their immigration status. So those are just some of the data that I wanted to share, and thank you. I'll send the floor for the rest.
Thank you, Martha. And I really hope that we can kickstart and do the work that needs to get done so that we can close that gap closer to than 2038. So, or 2338, goodness. So that's why it's perfect that I'm going to now go to Star. So Star, Women Employed has been working on closing the gender wage gap since 1973 and recently became the backbone organization for the Equal Pay Chicago Coalition. Woohoo. How has research and data been translated into actionable strategies for organizations, policymakers, and advocates? And what are some of the state and local policies that have been particularly effective in addressing the wage gap for Latinas and other marginalized groups?
Thank you. And yeah, Martha, thank you so much for that presentation. That I'm still hopeful that we're going to do the work to, maybe lower that, or maybe they're going to have to put my brain into like something, or all of our brains, and then we have to continue forward. So we'll see how that goes. But Women Employed in 1973, we were founded on really addressing wage discrimination. It was very evident back then, and it is right now, and that's really the reason why we exist. And so we have translated research into data in so many ways. And like through the Equal Pay Chicago Coalition, all we do is use data to really inform the public. You know, we really make it digestible because as you can see, charts and stuff, right? Like, they're all very helpful, but sometimes, you know, for someone who's not really in this work, it can be a lot to digest. And so through the coalition, we use data to really push certain things out to the public to show them how all these things really affect them and impact not only their lives, but the lives of their families. And so research has really informed policies like Paid Leave for All Workers Act that provides employees with 5 days of paid off for any reason. Yes, if you didn't know about it, now you know, for any reason whatsoever. And so this was really critical for, you know, for individuals to have access to paid time off, which is short term, but this really supports low wage workers. And this couldn't have been done really without showing like how many individuals out there are not getting the short-term care that they need. You know, when it comes to public awareness, you know, I remember being at a conference not long ago. You know, my mom went through some medical issues. I turned into a caregiver, didn't see myself as a caregiver. I'm just a daughter doing what I'm doing, what I think is right because she's my mom and I love her. And it wasn't until a conference with Caring Across Generations where I was like, oh my God, I'm a caregiver and it impacts my life in A, B, C, and it impacts my sister's life, A, B, C, like, you know, and it's all these things. And so really helping people understand their role in society and like how that's really impacting them, impacting their daily lives in general, right? We don't get paid for this work. We don't get paid to be caregivers. And on top of that, working 2 jobs and taking care of kids and going to school and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also, you know, we also want to work hard to remove these barriers. And so, you know, we're still advocating for long-term care because we still don't have that, but it's important to know there are 13 states that have a paid family and medical leave program, 13 states. And so just hearing that, you're like 13 states, we have more than 13 states. Why is that a thing? Why isn't this a nationwide, you know, initiative that people are pushing for? 62% of Illinoisans and their families cannot take unpaid leave without risking their jobs or their economic security. 62%, that is majority of the people who live in Illinois. That's huge. That means no matter what you believe in, no matter who you're voting for, it impacts everyone. This is a universal issue. It's not just impacting one person or another. It's impacting us all, but it's primarily impacting Latinas because we are in these low wage you know, positions because we are in organizations and companies who are not giving us paid time off, that are not giving us, you know, the salary that we deserve. You know, and also it's our job to also empower these individuals to know that they are worth more, that they bring value to whatever table that they bring to. We eliminated the sub-minimum wage in Chicago. The sub-minimum wage was $7. $7 is some change, right? The change, I mean, obviously added up, but at the end of the day, it was $7. How can you raise your family? How can you survive on your own? It wasn't that long ago that they came out with another data point, like you need to make $90,000 to, you know, to survive in Chicago. $90,000 to survive in Chicago. I can tell you majority of people in certain positions are not making that and having to work multiple jobs in order to survive. And people are not thriving. Families are not thriving. They're literally just surviving. And so by eliminating the sub-minimum wage, that really impacts many people in hospitality and especially a lot of tip workers, right? We have 73,000 people working in like hospitality, 44,000 just in the city of Chicago. And then 44% of that are women. And 55% of that are women of color or people of color, right? It's impacting individuals. And we really needed to eliminate that so that way they have a chance to make a living wage. And so that has been really, you know, an honor to like just have pushed for that. And then just looking ahead to our new salary transparency law that's going into effect in 2025, this will require employers to disclose salary ranges in job postings. That's insane, right? Like, yeah, it is good to know how much you're getting paid before applying, right? But that's just not the norm, right? Like, it is probably the norm in Indeed and stuff, but like, even then, I mean, I know we've walked the block and we see a, you know, hiring sign is like $15 an hour and stuff like that. Well, let's do that everywhere. So that way people really know what they're negotiating, that they are aware that this is equitable and that everybody is getting paid this, not just, you know, one person versus another. And so this is going to go into effect in 2025, and it's really going to be really impactful for individuals, and hopefully also empower individuals to really also advocate for more, because this is a great step, and this is a step to get us hopefully closer than 2398. But you know, it's a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot of public awareness that needs to go out, so that way people can know what's going on, know about their rights, and also feel empowered to advocate for them.
Thank you, Star. And you're absolutely right. You know, people deserve to not be put in the impossible decision of working and being able to pay their bill, or being able to be part of like a very important event for their family, or even just to rest. Workers both deserve, right, family sustaining jobs, as well as the ability to enjoy their lives and to be able to thrive. So thank you so much for all the advocacy Women Employed does. You're always champions. We really appreciate it. All right, I will now go to Linda. So for Linda, Mujeres Latinas en Acción, which you lead, has made a very public commitment to pay your own staff equitably. Okay. Based on your experience, what are the most important lessons for organizations looking to advance pay equity for Latinas, and what challenges have you faced implementing pay equity policies, and how did your organization overcome it?
Well, thank you for that question. I am just amazed by the information that Star and Marta have shared, and it's really kind of highlighted the great need for why Mujeres Latinas en Acción had to do this work. One of the lessons from this is that pay equity is a journey. I know we say that, we use that word journey a lot, but it really is. We need, as a not-for-profit sector, to really identify and advocate for those resources to lift up our staff. Women of color, people of color, oftentimes want to give back to their community. They should give back to their community, but they're in a sector where the resources are scarce. So we need to do a better job as nonprofit leaders to advocate. And it's a process and a journey that, you know, you have to be in for and really committed to. So one of the lessons that I would say is being transparent with your staff is super important. When we actually brought in a pay equity consultant that was a national organization that specialized in this, they provided us figures of how to actually get to where we needed to go to really bring everybody up to that pay equity level. And one of the hard lessons was we didn't have all the resources at that moment to get everyone where they need to go. So first, making sure we communicate to that folks. But we did take their advice in terms of compensating people to that next level. And so for those individuals who were on our pay scales, who were those in the, like, from the 1 to 5 pay scale, so not our directors, not our leadership, we did increase their salary. And we made an initial commitment to continue to increase our minimum wage. And we notified our staff, right now, you who are not in leadership are the most important to lift up your salaries. Because we don't have the resources right now to lift everyone, but you need to be prioritized. And so we communicated that. That was in the spring and then fall of 2022. And then in 2023, we were able to secure more resources, and we made another commitment to lift up everyone's salary 5%. And then we made some other salary adjustments for those individuals who were not able to get that in the initial round. And so that was also part of our strategy. And then in this year, we're going to do another 5% increase for all staff. That's larger than inflation. And so that is a practice that I want to continue to do. Another lesson is, how do you make sure that you are advocating for resources when many of your organizations that are your sister organizations in gender-based violence don't do advocacy or don't do organizing? We need more not-for-profits dedicated to doing advocacy and organizing around raising the salaries of our employees. That's incredibly important. So Mujeres has really done a great job in the last several years in terms of pinpointing to others, when you have advocacy as part of your kind of your DNA, it can really build you up in a way where not only you're advocating for your community, but you're advocating for the people who do the hard work every day and serve those who are survivors, empresarias, entrepreneurs, our leaders, our promotores de salud, that really need to be lifted up. And so I'm really excited that this year, in terms of our commitment to pay equity, not only do we continue, since 2022, we publish our pay scales to all, but we've already been doing a practice of 3 years of when we post a job internally and externally, it has the pay scale. So we were very much leaders in the gender-based violence sector of saying, hey, this is what the pay is. And, you know, to me, I wish that I love the fact that we have the salary transparency law going into effect in January. But to me, this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you already be educating those who are interested in working with you how much you're going to be paying people for what they're worth, right? And so that to us is really important. Right now, the minimum wage in Chicago, starting on July 1st, went to $16.20. We are going to be raising our minimum wage later this month from $19.20 to $20.60. So I am very, very, keen on how are people going to not make a minimum wage, but click closer to a thriving wage. And I think that's the other thing too, is that this is something where when I think when you advocate for this, it's something where you have to remember that these are people's lives you're dealing with. And I really love what Star talked about being a caregiver. We work in a women's organization like Women Employed. All of us are caregivers, whether we're the grandma, the mom, I tell people I'm Tia backup, auntie backup. We all are caregiving. And we have to figure out how we don't penalize the wonderful women of our world who do that. And so part of pay equity, I think also is making a commitment to try to make sure we're providing flexibility, because we shouldn't be penalizing the wonderful caregivers of our world for doing what's right and taking care of the people that we love. And so I think that is a really important commitment. Another hard lesson I would say, and I'm trying to be mindful of time, is explaining that pay equity is not just about you, it's about everyone. It's trying to treat everyone fairly. And that's really hard sometimes for some people to swallow. And I think that one of the recommendations that we took to heart from our pay equity consultants was, when you hire someone, you do not negotiate salary or benefits. If you continue to allow for negotiation, it can exacerbate pay inequities. And so that was a real kind of like shock to us, but it made sense once they explained it to us. And I think that that is part of like the journey of doing that. I'll be working on publishing our next pay scales for staff. It's a lot of work, but it's really important. And so for those not-for-profit organizations or any corporation who is really dedicated to pay equity, you really need to make sure you're prioritizing not only finding the money to do this, putting that in your budget, but also making sure that you're fundraising for it. So right now, I think starting in January, we'll begin a process again of trying to identify funds to do another pay equity assessment to see where we are landing in terms of our pay scales.
Thank you so much for all the details too, to like really create an example. I just feel like it can feel so daunting, right? When you're already being in leadership and then not being able to create like a structure that can work. So I'm sure people will want to know your secrets later of how to run this successfully. Okay, I have another question here to go back into a little bit of the data, but also about, the identities that intersect, right? That also can make it, even more vulnerable for Latinas in the workplace. So for Martha, like how do factors like immigration status, education level, and types of jobs that Latinas are concentrated in compound the wage gap? And what are the broader implications due to these intersecting identities and inequalities?
I see. Thank you. Well, I think the kind of like the way it compounds the three factors, lower educational attainment, immigration status, and it compounds into being segregated into lower paying jobs, having lower capacity of like job mobility, and trying to actually move into higher earning jobs that provide benefits. And if we go back to like the broader implications, I would say one of the most important is this lack of access to benefits in the job, like having quality jobs that allow for more workplace flexibility to to provide caregiving, the access to sick paid leave and to paid leave overall, It's very important. And then access to other benefits that are incredibly relevant for the workers, such as health insurance and the capacity to contribute to a pension or to a retirement savings account. And that's kind of like the long-term impact that I always want to highlight. The lack of access to this type of jobs, it's going to lead to Latina women not having retirement savings. A lot of them, because of the compounding effect of not having access to better better immigration status or like a recognition of their immigration status, even if it's a visa, it's going to be that they're not going to contribute to their social security, most likely not have a social security by the time that they want to retire. And this is going to have a significant impact in the retirement age. Another important thing that I want to highlight is that then the lack of like we're seeing that 32% of Latinos were classified as immigrants last year, right? And this includes people working on visas and also people who are undocumented. And among those, Latino women are going to be the ones, especially if they're undocumented, they're going to be providing care work, right, for a lot of families in the United States. And this women who are making up a significant share of the care workforce in the United States lack these benefits. So organizations like the ones that we recognize on the ground that are working for women to have better conditions in their low-paid jobs are important because they're going to help provide for this kind of benefits. And I would highlight especially sick paid leave and health insurance or some way of accessing health insurance. The other important thing is that immigration status is going to affect the capacity to benefit and access any other kind of welfare programs that are available for people. And this is something that we need to address. So the compounding effect is important, and something that we need to keep in mind is what's going to happen to our retirement age, to the Latinas' access to retirement income in retirement age, right? Especially if they don't have access to Social Security. So those are some of the important things that I wanted to highlight. Another important thing is the compounding effect is that we're going to be more likely to be subject to discrimination in the job, and the fact that there is a higher likelihood of discrimination. It's also going to have an impact on the capacity to try to negotiate better earnings or to switch jobs into jobs that might have better conditions. So these are just some of those factors and the high inequalities that they might bring up.
Thank you. And especially, we're talking about, generational wealth. So that's like the real impact, right, of when you're not getting all of the wage you deserve, as well as the different benefits you deserve. It's like creating this generational wealth gap. And I always like to take a moment because it's only been 50 years since women have been able to open a bank account without the signature of their husband. Like, I want to create, I love our abuelas, and like they really killed it and they did everything that they can. I want to make sure we give them space because they were fighting for the bare minimum to open a bank account, right? And so now it's our turn to carry the torch into closing the pay gap and making it shorter. So I'm going to now pivot to Star so she can talk about that generational wealth gap that we're talking about, but also how are we going to start to shorten this and do our abuelas proud?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the wage gap for Latinas really begins early in life, often with lower wages in their first jobs and really setting a trajectory for the rest of their lives. I remember not getting paid as a kid, allowance, not getting paid for cooking and cleaning and sweeping and doing all these things, but my brother would get paid to throw out the garbage. He would get his little dollar and stuff like that, because in my parents' mind, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, the women had to kind of do that, right? And so, great, I can probably do it all, and the man can't still cook and clean, but like, it was something that really like impacted me. So even early on in my career, I tell this story, I worked at Women Employed at first when I was in my undergrad and one of my first jobs, and I was going in for a promotion and my boss literally was like, "You're promoted." I'm like, "Yay, this is amazing." And I was ready to walk out the door. She was like, "Wait, ask me for more money." And I was just like completely thrown off. I'm like, "What do you mean ask you for more money? Like, is this a trick question?" Like, it just didn't seem real to me. And she's like, "No, you always ask for more. Always ask for more, Star." And so that really started a lot for me. That really impacted my life completely. And I always ask for more. And so, but like, we don't have that mindset. We don't have the mindset of asking for more. We don't have that mindset of like, I actually bring all this to the table and it deserves to be appreciated and paid for. And so, I know that all the work that I've been doing is really going to help my little sister. Like, she's definitely in a better stage than I was at her age. And I already know that, through the work that I'm doing, that's really going to set her up for life and in a better way, and really hopefully encourage her to always ask for more. And so really, we know that 51 cents for every dollar paid to a white non-Hispanic man, meaning it means that we lose more than $1.2 million in a 40-year career. $1.2 million. That's insane, right? And that's literally because we're not asking for more, because the system is not really set up for us to even ask for more. Like, we're just supposed to settle. Like, I was going to settle, gosh, I don't want to show my age, but like at this point, it was like 8-9 years ago, where I was like, I will accept this. Like, this was great. And if it wasn't for her to, at that moment, asking me for more or to ask for more, I probably would have just accepted whatever moving forward. And so addressing all these disparities it's not only a matter of fairness, but it's also essential for boosting the overall economy. We know that Latinos contribute to this economy, and especially Latinas. And there's really like about $23 trillion that is really left out into our economy because we don't have the resources, we don't have the access that we need to, really help. We have just all these barriers that we have to continue to overcome. And so again, it's really with all these policies, with the Pay Leave for All Workers Act, eliminating the subminimum wage, the salary transparency law, and hopefully passing a paid family and medical leave program in 2025, that we're really going to help dismantle the wage gap and ensure that, people can build for their futures, that they can actually save, and that, money is not just going for food, or, my tire is flat, or like, this emergency happened, childcare, which we know is like outrageously expensive, right? We don't have time to save. And then on top of that, we haven't, our Latinos aren't really educated in like how to save and what are stocks and like what are all these things to help you, build your future. Again, we're only thinking about the day to day. We're only thinking about putting food on the table, paying for childcare, so on and so forth. And so if we can, again, remove these barriers, Latinas will be able to save and really build generational wealth that, again, like I hope to build for my little sister.
Thank you, Star. And I love that your first supervisor was like, no, like I'm going to give you your first lesson right now. You're going to ask for more money right now. But you're absolutely right. It is. And it's truly like word of mouth, it feels, is like the number one way that you learn, that you can have this platform, that you can negotiate, and what you're able to do. Especially growing up, I felt like it was always like a message of you're very lucky to be here, right? Very fortunate to be here, very fortunate to have more opportunities than like maybe our other family members might in other countries, especially like as an immigrant. And that's like a whole mindset change to be like, no, not just lucky to be here, they're lucky to have you, right? And realizing the talents that you really bring. So I also, I want to take a quick pivot, but it's incredibly important for Linda. Mujeres has participated in 2 important advocacy victories in increasing funding for domestic violence and sexual violence programs in Illinois. Why are these victories so important to Latina pay equity, and what lessons do you have from other nonprofit organizations that employ Latinas and women of color?
So thanks for that question. Latinas and other women of color are heavily represented in human services. I had said that previously. When we think about how we do this work, we have to think about how we work in coalition. And so part of the victory is that we worked in coalition. We worked in partnership with other gender-based violence organizations that also cared about their employees and how we provide better wages, thriving wages for those that do the hard work every day. So I'm very grateful to partners like Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the Network Advocating for DV, for being part of this vision, because as women, we can accomplish so much together. But I also think that's what's really important is that, the pay equity has to be part of what we talk about always with elected officials and what we talk about when we're talking about funding with our private funders and our private partners as well. This is something that should be a constant. So when we have these victories in 2022 and then in this year in 2024, we already had elected officials who were primed to be receptive to the fact that in human services, where many women of color are employed, need to have that lift. And so when we had the victory this spring, where we increased the Rape Crisis Center line item in the state budget from about 8 million to 20 million, we already had a very receptive audience. So again, advocacy is key to everything that we do. I think another thing I would say is truly important is that employers shouldn't be afraid and should applaud when employees advocate for themselves. I think some employers get really scared, and I think you have to be transparent and be honest about what is going on. Don't hide these things and encourage that. Like anytime an employee comes to me and says, I think that I would love for you to consider some sort of adjustment in my salary or provide me explanation for why I'm being put at this range, I think you need to start that conversation with an open mind and applaud them, congratulate them for coming forward. It takes a lot of courage. I'm really grateful to Star for what she shared about her own personal journey. I didn't ask for a salary adjustment until I had this job. And I'm in my 40s. Women need to start advocating for themselves when they're young, but it's hard. Part of it is how we're programmed as women in our culture. It's part of it is also our own Latina cultures that we have that are beautiful in many ways, but make us humble. We need to start that journey later. When I see young women advocate for themselves, I'm like, gosh, I wish I did that. So as employers, we need to do more to cultivate that and not be alarmed. This is part of ways that we can make all of our society better. And as Latinas, we have a responsibility to pay it forward and do better.
Absolutely. And I think really connecting yours and Star's advocacy and it being so critical, right? If we're not creating situations where women can thrive, especially, if they're in the service sector or doing human service work, they don't have the freedom to be able to leave a job if they need to leave a job or to make a big life change, so that being able to save and also being able to support these workers allows them to be empowered to be able to make any decisions in their lives, right? So I do want to address one question in the chat because it is about unions, and I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't. So again, I work for the Chicago Federation of Labor. It is it's the Central Labor Council for over 300 unions in Chicago and Cook County, and we represent over 500,000 members in Cook County. So I know Ariane, so she asked about, what about unions? Is it the best way for asking for more together and not on the shoulders of an individual woman? Unions are a great option if you want to bridge that pay gap and also have a collective voice in your workplace. It could be about anything. It could be about pay, but it could also be about healthcare. It could also be about a reasonable work schedule. It could be about there was a grocery store that used to require that workers organized, the UFCW did, but they used to require workers to do the chicken dance whenever someone ordered chicken. They could truly be about everything because of creating a dignified workplace for you, and that's what you deserve. So if there is any interest for folks on this call of what are unions, can I start one in my workplace? I do encourage that you reach out to the Chicago Federation of Labor. We've got a great team that can talk about it and navigate that process with you. Because I do think it's really powerful when you bargain collectively, and I think that honestly, unions they've been the path to the middle class, and I think they will continue to be as we are making sure that everybody has a way that they can really thrive. So I think that we are coming to the end here. So I want to pass the torch to Star to give some final remarks and to see if there's any other things we need to cover.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so again, there's a lot of information that we presented to you. If you are interested in learning more, you are not alone. We have obviously the different organizations that are represented here that you can reach out to for additional support. We'll be sure to send out contact information in the follow-up email. And really, you can always join, even as an organization or as an individual, the Equal Pay Chicago Coalition. So if you go to equalpaychicago.org, you'll find more information. We have a lot of different resources about like know your rights, about negotiation. We have a beautiful know your rights or equal pay tip sheets that give you some data points and some information, again, about just knowing your rights and how to advocate for yourself. And then we also do have various events that like this one that we have in order to, raise public awareness. Coming in 2025, we do have the Barb Young Scholarship Contest that will be launched that will help support an advocate in the city to do their work. And so that will be launching in 2025. So if you're interested in supporting or donating, please do so. You can do that on, again, equalpaychicago.org. And then before just closing us out, again, these are an amazing panel with amazing women that I have the honor of working with on a constant basis and who inspire me daily. And so I really appreciate you all being here. But just, one last piece of advice, for our viewers today, what's one thing that you would like to, kind of say to them to help motivate them? I think for me, it's, know your worth, know that you bring value, know that you can always ask for more and that you're amazing. Latinas, we have a perspective, un sazón to us that nobody else can have, right? And so we bring something to the table. We bring perspectives and an energy and a fire that no one else does. And so we constantly need to just remember that. Because me too, I think I'm pretty far in my career, but I get imposter syndrome too. Like I was at an event yesterday and for 1 second I'm like, oh my God, like I'm alone. And then, I had to kind of snap myself out of it. So know that happens, but no, again, you're not alone. We're all going through this together. Find your community, reach out to us, reach out to me. I'm happy to support because, we can accomplish a lot more together than as individuals. Anybody else have some final words?
Yeah, I think the last thing was just the whole you're not lucky to be there, they're lucky to have you. There's a lot of things that we all tag in for, to be part of the team and be a team player. And so I think all of us do a little bit more or a lot bit more out of our job description. So you should always keep that in mind when going into these conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you want more information, please follow us at equalpaychicago.org. And thank you all to Women Employed, to the Institute of Women's Policy Research, Mujeres Latinas en Acción, and the Chicago Federation of Labor for all of your support. Adelante. Take care, y'all.
Gracias.